Say it louder, Africa, say it louder. Say it louder. Salam alaikum, assalamu alaikum, salam alaikum, assalamu alaikum, salam alaikum, assalamu alaikum, salam alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
United we stand, divided we fall. All we need is freedom. All we need is one love. Free Africans free. Free Africans free.
Be free, be free, free from slavery. Free, be free, be free, free from slavery. Free, free yourself from mental slavery. Free, free yourself from mental slavery. Free, free yourself from mental slavery. Free, be free, be free, free from slavery. Be free, be free, free from slavery. Yeah.
We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war. We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war. We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war.
Salam alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Salam alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Salam alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Salam alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever you tune in today. This is Concerned Citizen of South Sudan is live. It is January 21st, 2023. We are live tonight with this topic, economic and political impacts of the resources curse in South Sudan. Our guest today is economist, brother, a member of United Citizens for Change, Moses Edward Moker. We'll continue with this live show today. And I want you, and I'm asking you here, if you tune in today, to go ahead and like and prescribe our channel on YouTube, which is John Cormayol. Please go ahead and subscribe to that so you can get any new video from that point. So we are doing this. Last week, we were talking about the current political and health of the president. We are not diverting away, but we will come back this week also. We will continue to talk about that. But now, let's talk about economy, economic and political impacts of the curse in South Sudan. Please join us. Go ahead and share the live video. My dear brother, Moses Edward, in this very important topic, this is the area actually of his profession. It will help us tonight in this. We have so many questions that we are going to ask, Moses Edward. What is the resources curse of the paradox of plenty? These are the questions we are asking tonight. What does resources curse create in the country? All right. And what has been experience of South Sudan in managing the oil resources revenue? Many countries have better development outcomes than South Sudan, while they have less natural resources, such as Singapore, South Korea. Okay, and what is the way forward as well at the end of our program? That's the question also we are going to ask my guest here. Moses Edward. But before we start, Ustaz Moses, I want you to greet our audience and we start our discussion. Please, the microphone on you.
Ustaz John Kormayol, I would like to greet you and thank you for your effort, your time, your energy in this journey of enlightening our people, uh, the citizen of South Sudan, about the economic issues that affect our country. I greet all of them, and I would like to tell them we are trying to diversify our discussion topics. We cannot just keep relying on the current political issues. We must talk about economics, history, because all these things um, are all interconnected. And economics is the driver of politics. And all the things that you are seeing in South Sudan that are happening and in developing countries in Africa are economic interest driven. So without oil money, there would be no all this political mess in the country. That's why we want to go deeper in the concept of the resource case,
Mhm.
shown in details. What is it, and how is it impacting South Sudan, and what is the way forward? And we will also look for their other experiences. تجارب بتاع الدول الأخرى,
Mhm.
what have they done to overcome this? And this is a very important topic. I think if we have a glimpse of understanding about this, it will give you a big picture of why there is four evils that we call four evil in the United Citizen for Change.
Mhm.
Why there is grand corruption, why there is civil wars, why there is mismanagement of state affairs, why there is tribalism. All these are connected with the poor leadership and resource scarce. But today I am going to focus on the economics and political impact of resource scarce in the context of South Sudan. But I will also elaborate more on
Mhm.
the experiences of other countries that have more natural resources such as oil and gas and diamonds. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ustaz Moses Edward. Greeting people and start this discussion. Again, I want to remind our viewers, please go ahead and like and share, and also follow us on the YouTube and subscribe our channel right there. This is very important topic that we are discussing tonight, as you can see here on the screen: economic and political impact of resource curse in South Sudan, with my guest in the studio, Moses Edward. I want to let you know to our viewers tonight. Also, we are not going to take very long. As usual, we are going to do this thing in 1 hour because we have other commitment that we scheduled today. Ustaz Moses, thank you again for coming to Concern Citizen of South Sudan and present this very important, issues of economic. I know our people, they are more reluctant when they are hearing about economic. They like just top, hard topic. But economic is the backbone of the country also, and the government as well. Because if you don't have a strong economy, you will not function. And that's why we are not functioning as well as the country. So I want you to lay it down. I want you to help our viewers who are watching here today and who are listening to the clubhouse as well. What is the resource curse of the paradox of the plenty? And you can go on and on and on and on with all these questions that we are asking you tonight. Fadl, Ustaz Moses.
Ustaz Comrade John Kormayol, thank you so much
Mhm.
for this chance. First of all, the idea of resource cares came from British economist called Richard M. Oti,
Mm.
um, and it was known as the Dutch disease um, that happened in Netherlands when gas was discovered in 1959 in Netherlands, and then the Netherlands shifted to gas industry and ignored the other important industries in their economy. So it was by then called the Dutch disease. But this British economist called Richard M. Oti came up with this terminology called uh, the resource curse, and sometimes it is also known as the paradox of plenty. And there are two words there, the words scarce and plenty resources. The idea is that resource scarce in a plain English definition, it is the, the concept that God has blessed all country, most countries, and some countries with more natural resources. Those natural resources could be like oil in South Sudan, or gas or diamond in South Africa and Botswana or Liberia. Those resources are meant to develop the country, whether economic development or human development. They are meant to be utilized to improve the livelihood of the people, the quality of life. But if those resources are not utilized well, then the country can still have natural resources such as Sudan or South Sudan in this context, and still be underdeveloped. So it is a negative relation between um, the abundance of resources in natural resources in the country and the outcomes of the development in the country. So this is the simple explanation of what a resource curse is. It is not in a context of religion. That curse in a religion context is any negative word is spoken against you, or if you violated the laws and the principle of God, then God will curse you. This is in a context of economics, that economics as principles and laws that guides the policies and how to utilize the natural resources that are God given in the land, and how to use those resources to develop the economy of a country, and whether human development or economic development, those resources should not be wasted. So that is the main concept of that. But let me take our people into the connection between resource cares and the idea of development in historical context, and then so that some people who are not familiar with this can understand it.
And some people also, says Moses, they may ask this question. Um, this question, it may be lingering in their mind. And what did resource curse create in South Sudan, for instance? Because we have a lot of resources, but what did it create in South Sudan? Maybe that's a question you need to answer before you move forward.
Yep. I will come there. There's about nine things that
Mhm.
researchers have created in South Sudan. But let me connect resources and development in
Okay.
the historical context.
Right.
In the historical context, um, countries, some countries are richer in terms of natural resources, and some are not. So what happened in 1945 when the United Citizen of the State president called Harry S. Truman was a president of USA from
Yeah,
1945.
United States of America.
Yes,
Okay, no problem.
United States of America. Everything started from there. I mean, development concept that we are talking about in developing countries and developed nations. So Harry Truman, uh, Harry Truman was a tough president in USA, and he was one of the president that bombed Japan, bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki I've been to Hiroshima and I've seen the video how disastrous it was. So Harry Truman, in his speech on the 20th of February 1945, he laid out 4 points. The first 3 points was that there must be United Nations that must be strengthened to be strong, and that was a result of the outcome of the Second World War, when all the European nations have to place themselves in the hand of the United States of America and the Soviet Union. And America and Soviet were not interested in the agenda of colonial empires in Europe. So America changed the world order and Soviets, and in that speech of President Harry, the number 33 president of USA, he outlined 4 points, and one of the points connects the resources and development, and that's why I want to take people back to that idea. So first, he said that we are going to form the UN, and the League of Nations that was exploiting the resources through colonization was abolished, and they formed the United Nations in 1945, but it was not effective. But in 1949, this president came with four policies. One, to strengthen UN, United Nations to be effective. Number two, he came up with the Marshall Plan to reconstruct Europe, I mean, to rebuild Europe. This is where they came with the idea of World Bank and MIF. These are new institutions. But World Bank was created to reconstruct and support the development of Europe after the Second World War. The third point, to create NATO to defend the European countries. And then the fourth point was not actually intended to be part of his speech, but it turned out to be very important to the developing nations, the Latin America and the African countries, the poor countries by then. They used to call them poor countries, and then it goes to developing countries, and then, I mean, third world to developing countries. Now it is called Global South. So whatever name you give, the best name is they are underdeveloped. So the fourth point that Harry Truman says that we must use technical assistance to transfer our science and technology and the ways of managing economies and development to Latin America and to poor countries in Africa. So there, the word development became um, um, viral in that time. That every country in 1949, after that speech of Harry Truman, was embarked in policies of development and how to get technical assistance from US. So that is the historical context. And then countries were divided into two. There are some countries that have a lot of natural resources, and some don't have. And it turned out that uh, in Middle East, countries like Iraq and Libya and most Gulf countries have a lot of natural resources such as oil, and many countries in Africa such as South Africa, Liberia, Republic of Congo, and Sudan itself, and South Sudan and Botswana, so many African countries, and even in Latin America or South America, like Venezuela, Ecuador, they have a lot of natural resources that were expected
Yes.
by the UN and the other countries to that these countries will develop faster than the countries that don't have natural resources.
Mm.
But it turned out to be the opposite. It turned out to be the opposite that many countries that have wealth of natural resources in the world are not developed, are underdeveloped. So this raised the question of what is called there could be something called resource scarce. There could be economic policies that these countries are not following, or economics or political structures that they don't have in place.
Mm.
Therefore, it is unfortunate that people are rich in resources, but they still don't have better school, better roads, and all those what resource case has created in South Sudan. And I'm going to go to 9 things that
No problem. Take your time.
we have talked about them as four evils. They are part of the things that are considered to be resource scarce in South Sudan and in many other African countries. So if you look at the countries that have natural resources, but I'm going to focus on oil. You look at the index of oil dependency state. You see the list of countries and the level of their dependency on the natural resources such as oil. You will find that in 1983, Iraq was the first country that explored their oil, Fitalata Tamanin, until 2023. So they had a lot of oil, but that oil has turned out to be a curse because they depend on 98%. The level of oil dependency in Iraq is 98%. In Libya is 94%. In Yemen is 91%. In Iran is 85%. In Afghanistan, the level of oil dependency of a country or a state or a government is 96%. In Syria is 67%. And all these countries, they have what is called resource scarce experiences. And those could be civil war, could be corruption, could be authoritarian governments. And I'm going to come to more details. But the higher the level of oil dependency of a country, the less developed they are. The more they have the symptoms, the political and the economic symptoms of resource scarce. Unlike some countries like Singapore and South Korea and Taiwan in Asia, they have less natural resources, but they have shifted from developing countries to developed nations. For example, Singapore and South Korea, they are developing faster. Their economies are growing faster than the countries like South Sudan that have oil and depend on oil by 98% during independence and up to now 95%. So the issue here is not having resources. It is how you utilize the resources to improve the livelihood of the people in human development and in economic development to grow the economy so that people and the citizen can benefit from the natural resources that God has given them. But unfortunately, it is really a paradox of plenty. The word paradox of plenty is the same meaning of resource scarce. Paradox is a word that has two opposite contradictory meanings or impacts. For example, it's a concept that if you put it in a religious context, like the paradox of Jesus Christ being the Son of God and being a human being. So two things, they don't go together. Being a son of God and then being a man at the same time, 100% God, 100% man. It is the paradox that Jesus Christ was rich in heaven, but he came to earth to be poor so he can save people. So being rich in heaven and being poor on earth. So that is the meaning of paradox. So being rich in resources and being poor in the quality of life. For example, it is a case if you have resources and you don't benefit the citizen. In which way? First, in most countries, not only South Sudan, that uh, depends 90% or 70% or 80% plus on oil or other natural resources, there is always a poor quality of life in those countries, especially in the developing nation. The poor quality of life, you can find it in the infant mortality high rates. It's always high. Children died. For example, in South Sudan, in the area where oil is produced, a lot of children are dying. Infants are dying because of the environmental pollution. The oil companies and the government have mismanaged the byproducts of the oil production. So that has turned it to be a curse. Instead of utilizing that oil money to build better hospital and even to manage the waste better, so they can protect the environment and the land that could be used in agriculture sector to produce goods that could be exported like oil. Now, the mismanagement of byproducts of oil is turning into a curse. It is creating poor low life quality in South Sudan. There is a poor quality of life in South Sudan and many other countries that have oil, such as Iraq, Syria, and Libya. So, child malnutrition is very high in South Sudan, and also there is low life expectancy of 57%. That is the life expectancy in South Sudan, and there is poor health system. There are poor hospitals, simply because the government has not been investing the oil money to improve the quality of the citizens. They are only improving the quality of the elites, the national security, the few MI, and their public looters, the so-called businessmen. But they are not thinking on how to invest that oil money to improve the quality of life with the children, to reduce the malnutrition in South Sudan, because most children in South Sudan
Mm,
do 3 meals per day. I am very sure I've been in Juba. It is very,
mm.
very fine. Families having 3 meals. So sometimes they have one, or sometimes they don't even have. So the quality of life in a country that is rich in oil, such as South Sudan, is very poor compared to Singapore and South Korea that don't have much oil. Simply because there is something that is wrong with the system of the government that is not investing. And what happened, what make it to be a case, when you take the oil or diamonds or gold from the land, you exported it and you bring in the money, US dollars, and invest, then it is not a case. If you reinvest in humans and infrastructure, it is not a case. But if you sell oil and you loot the money, you keep them in Dubai, you keep them in Kenya, you keep them in Uganda, in Ethiopia, and you're buying things in neighboring countries, and you are not bringing back the oil money to invest in the country, it's become a curse. It is a curse because that money, if you open businesses and develop agricultural sector, it will employ other people. It will employ other citizens. All citizen will not rely on government jobs. But what is making it a curse in South Sudan, the oil money is not coming back into South Sudan. It is the oil that is getting out, being exported to other countries, but the oil money, millions and billions of dollars, are not coming back to the country. So South Sudan is becoming poorer every day. If you take one barrel, you sell it, you don't bring back the money, the country is becoming poorer every day. So, number two, it become a case, a resource such as oil become a case if the income from the oil is not utilized to address the basic problem that are created, such as environmental problem. It also become number three. It's also become a case if the oil that is exported and the money is not brought back and invested in education. If you compare rich countries that have more oil, the oil dependency states around the world, with the countries that have less oil, you find that most countries that depend on oil spend only 4% or less, could be 2%, 3%, but 4% of their GDP is spent on education. But some countries that don't have oil or diamonds and golds and other natural resources or gas, they spend high percent of their GDP in education. And if South Sudan, whether the government, are not thinking of increasing the level of what they get from oil, if they are not investing high percentage of the GDP in education, South Sudan will continue to be under the resource curse for the next 50 years until 2073, the next 50 years. Unless the level of oil revenues and the percentage that is spent in education is increased to 10% of GDP, we will still be under resource curse, because education creates skills and entrepreneurs
Mhm.
skills. People can create businesses and jobs in other industries, because the idea of a case is just focusing a country to rely on one source or one industry
Mm.
without diversifying the other industries such as agricultural and tourism. We are not even talking about tourism, Jonkor, and you always talk about that.
Yeah.
It is an industry, and even agriculture, for example,
Industry that generate more jobs, more income to the country,
and
actually.
more income. And these are the oil is a finite good; it can finish. But agricultural industry and tourism, they continue as long there is political stability and peace.
Mhm. Mhm.
They will continue to create jobs and sustain livelihood of the employees, and also the owners of the business will also make profits.
Mhm.
So if South Sudan is not increasing the level of GDP that is invested in education and in health, we will continue for the next 50 years in under resource case, because that's what has been the experience of many countries that has oil before South Sudan discovered or utilized their oil in 2011. Because from 2011, we can say that we were a country. And from there, we should have utilized all the oil incomes to, to invest in other industries, so that people don't just focus on government job, as it is the case now in South Sudan. Even the business people in Juba that I know, they all come to Minister of Finance to get the government money to make business. It is not the way in other countries like South Korea and Singapore. A business go to the bank and borrow money, not to borrow from the government. So all these of Kurajing and all these a lot of business people in South Sudan, they are looting the
Mm.
government.
Mm.
They are not real business people. They are looting the government, and the generals are giving them contracts, and they are not employing people. You don't find a businessman employing 50 people in South Sudan, so they can get salaries and take their kids to school, or be able to feed their children.
I wonder, if I may ask this question. This came, just right there in my mind. I wonder what kind of business that Shawi does. I hear always she's a businesswoman, she's a businesswoman. What manufacturing, what kind of business does she, you know, she own, and what kind of business she doesn't, and how many people actually does she employ in the country, to become that
Yeah,
business
at
woman?
least I will not go there, but she is connected. She's connected. What we call corruption in the first world is called connection.
Mm.
What we call corruption in the third world is called connection here in the first world. But the different, it is regulated in the Western world.
Mm.
She is connected. That's what I can say. I don't want to go into detail. She's connected with those of President Salva Kiir
Mm.
and those of Mel and those of Kurajing and a lot of business people and generals. So she's utilizing her connection, but at least she's giving poor people.
Well,
but,
you give people,
but
but the nature of the business, we have to
yeah,
know the integrity of business. What kind of business you do? How many people you employ? What is the source of this business? Where did you get this money? Uh,
yeah.
I, I
So,
I don't know. I just don't want to throw in because sometimes I said, okay, connection, good girls of year one, you call, you name it, But it's good to know, what kind of business do you do? Where you generate the money? Yes, you help people. That's a good thing. Thank you for doing that. But where are you getting the money? من أين لك هذا? That's the very important question,
this
Moses.
is very important. In America, they say, "How did you get rich?"
Yeah.
So the question that we should ask our millionaires that how did they get rich, starting from president up to those of Chaiwir and others, because if they came in 2005 up to now in age 17, 18 years, it is impossible. If you have 10 wives with the 50 kids that are working full time in the West, you will never get $50 million. You can have 10 wives with the 50 kids that are working full time in America, but you will not get $50 million. But 50 million, 20 million is nothing in South Sudan for our public thieves and looters. And I am not actually scared to call them public looters and public thieves because they have looted the oil money, and they are not investing oil money in agriculture. They are not investing it in education sector. They are not investing the oil money in health sector to improve the quality of life of South Sudanese. So
Anyway, time will come and we will investigate what kind of business, what are the source of that business, where they get the money. It's fine.
definitely,
It's fine for you to donate to people, but you know what? This is to remind me a guy I met in the state of Utah in the United States. He's a Somalian, and they were installing public money actually. They don't want to work and they just go and soliciting, and sometimes they said, oh, we are not married, in order to collect the fund from the government. But at the end of the day, sometimes they said, oh, this is haram, this is not money haram. And one professor actually was discussing them. We wanted to know, do you know the source of money, the money that you're collecting, the money that you are collecting from the government? Do you know where they come from? They are tax money, and this tax money, they are coming from all different, because you said now this is haram, you don't want this, you don't want that. So there are money tax coming from bar, from alcohol. There are other money coming from hookers, from those, where you call it, they are professional license, and 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 this money coming to the government, and now you are going and collecting this money. So every source have their own origin where the money come from, and
yep.
that's why we're always asking this question, to ask question. You can donate as much as you can, but where you got them from, that's why we want to know the source. Is this source, is it verified? Is it good? Or is it money laundering? Are you doing something illegal that you are getting the money, and then now you are doing a money, laundering, and then you come there and you go and give money to people, and people will be happy, and you donate whatever, and they can be shouting, oh, she's a good person, he's a good person, he donated money. But do we know exactly where he's getting the money?
This is one.
Our money.
This is one of the resource case
Mhm.
example. Why it is a resource case? Because there is always grand corruption in oil dependency or natural resource dependency countries.
Mm.
We say that one of the four evils in UCC is corruption, and National Dialogue has called it grand corruption.
Mm.
It is one of the negative thing that is affecting the citizen of South Sudan, corruption. Most leaders that rules countries that are rich in oil and diamonds and golds, they bribe their way so they can rule longer. That's what Saddam Hussein has been doing. Saddam Hussein has ruled for 35 years because of oil. Is bribing business people, is bribing anyone in national security, in military intelligence,
Mhm.
and neighboring countries, such MIT get 90 million. What did MIT do great than SPLA soldiers that did not get their salaries?
I know,
I mean,
my brother. I'm really still stuck with this question. And today, actually, because we are talking about economy, that's why I have this question. Those of Achaiwir, Bolmel, Kurajing, what kind of business do they do? What kind of business do they do to get this
the,
money?
the, the
Huh?
politics of South
Yeah,
Sudan
how
is
many people they employ actually? How
the
many
politics
people do they employ? Mm.
is a politic of being good boy or good girl, and having a godmother, a political godmother, and a political godfather. So if you are a young man like you, Jonkor, and I myself, or Dr. Peter Biar, if your political godmother is a Yandit or the wife of a minister of what, you get access to resources. If your political godfather is Maboto Mamur, you get contract for food for SPLM. If your political godfather is X and Y in army, you get contracts to bring medicine, to bring food, to bring what, but at the end you don't bring them to the SPLM or the citizen. So the culture of corruption is that the president is bribing his way out in leadership so he can stay. The next minister also will bribe his way out to stay, to be loved. And it goes down like that. So from minister to deputy minister to undersecretary to director general, to the least people that cannot bribe their way out are murasalat. But sometimes they exploit them sexually. I know
Mm.
this.
Mm.
So they can be even murasalat in South Sudan. So the level of corruption in our country has turned the resources to be a curse because the resources are being wasted. South Sudan, in fact, is not poor naturally in terms of resources. We are very rich. We should even give foreign aid to other countries, like Malawi. We should give foreign aid to other countries, such as Ethiopia. But unfortunately, because of the grand corruption that is being practiced from the level of presidency to ministers to undersecretaries to director generals and all other military, national security, and MI, it is a very, very high level of corruption. And that is one of the reasons why having a lot of natural resource could be a case. In countries where countries depend on income tax or tax system from the people, there is less corruption because with the tax, with the income tax from individual or businesses, people always have accountability in place, mechanism in place. The parliament will always scrutinize how ministers are spending the public money, and the auditors have more power to challenge any minister, and the parliament can summon any corrupt minister or generals. This is not happening in the Republic of South Sudan, and this shows that we are under a resource curse. So corruption is one of the symptoms of a resource curse in South Sudan. Secondly, the security sector and the presidency, they have an open budget, and this is common in all oil dependency states, whether in Iraq, in Syria, or Libya. That's how Muammar Gaddafi ruled for 42 years. But at least Muammar Gaddafi was providing basic social services to its citizens. But the case of South Sudan, they have copied the policies of all Sudan. In all Sudan, when I used to be there as a student in University of Khartoum, we know that the presidency of Bashir and the national security of Salal Ghosh and MI, military intelligence of Ibrahim Shemshadin, they have open budget. Their budget has no ceiling. And this is the same thing with South Sudan.
There's no cap. Mhm.
There's no ceiling. Well, yeah, there's no cap. There is no budget ceiling.
Mm.
For presidency, I have prepared the budget for 3 years. What you prepare in physical budget for 3 years, whether operation budget or capital or salary, wages and salaries, or emergency or contingency budget, it is always exceeded by 100 times, 200 times than what has been budgeted. And when you ask, you will not get an answer. The only answer is that they have copied the policy of all Sudan, that the budget of presidents must be opened. They can spend all the money of oil without question. And the same thing, the budget of national security is opened. And with such leakage in the oil money and budgets, you cannot see South Sudan being developed. Because the next president, if they change President Kiir, the same mentality of SPLM, with the same mentality of national security, and the same mentality of MI, the next president will also follow the president, follow bribing his way out in leadership, allowing corruption so people can like him or her to rule. Because most of our leaders, they are either volunteers or self-appointees. None of us in South Sudan have elected them, from president to the least minister. We have not elected them. In 1983, up to 2005, they were just volunteers. And after that, independent, up to now, they are self-appointees. You appoint yourself and you are accommodated. They're using the policy of accommodation and policy of compensation. They are accommodating their colleagues and compensating themselves. But they are not compensating the soldiers.
And dividing.
Yes, they are not compensating the soldiers that fought and liberate the country. They are not compensating the orphans of their colleagues that were killed in the war. They are not compensating the wounded of the SPLM. They are only compensating the elites, whether you are elites in NCP that has joined SPLM or you are elite within the SPLM. These are Political Bureau and National Liberation Council. And if this mentality is still in SPLM, whether you bring Waniga will still bribe his way, will allow this corruption to bribe MI, to bribe national security so he can stay in power more like President Kiir and Saddam Hussein, who ruled for 35 years, and other dictators. So having an open budget is by itself a resource case. National security must not have an open budget. They must follow the budget ceiling every fiscal year, full stop. The presidency must not have an open budget. They must be treated like any ministry. Minister of Education, Minister of Health, Minister of Wildlife should be treated the same like the presidency. Because having an open budget for presidency is the mother of all corruptions. Having an open budget in the national security is the mother of all corruption. That money that is being wasted in buying militias and buying houses in neighboring countries could be utilized to address the issues of resource cases in South Sudan, such as low life expectancy, illiteracy rate is very high. You can open more schools with that money. You can build a modern infrastructure in the country. You can boost other industries with that money. If that money or that surplus is invested in other sectors than oil. Politically, 5 countries that rank top on good governance. If you look at good governance, countries with the less natural resources they have good governance and good political stability. There is good governance and there is political stability. If you, I have shown you an example of South Korea and Taiwan and Taiwan and Singapore.
Singapore.
And Singapore is one of the best examples that we South Sudan should learn from it. Because what happened? This father of Singapore is called Lee Kuan Yew. He came up with a vision that making Singapore to be the safest place to live in the world and to work in. That was his vision. Number two, to treat every citizen equally. Number three, ensuring continuing success for this generation and the coming generations. And this how the leaders should have vision. So you can have good governance based on a vision and have better institutions that are driven, that are inclusive, and that are democratic institutions. Not these individualized institutions in South Sudan, whereby one man is equivalent to all institutions. So if you are a minister, you are the institution. If the minister is not there, the deputy minister becomes the institution. If the deputy minister is not there, the undersecretary becomes the institution. They can sack anyone, they can do anything with no complaint. If the undersecretary is not there, the director general can become the ministry. This individualized institution cannot address the resource scarce issues. All these symptoms, such as corruption, low life expectancy, a high level of illiteracy, and civil wars, cannot be addressed if we don't have good, inclusive, and democratic institution in the Republic of South Sudan. Because if we look at the experiences of other countries that have less natural resources like Singapore, they come with a vision. And there is a teamwork to implement the vision. And those leaders have personal character. They don't like corruption. And if you do corruption, you will be punished. So that's how Singapore developed. They have leaders with visions, and that vision is making Singapore the safest place to live in and work in. And it is now being fulfilled. They have shifted from a developing country to a developed nation because of their leaders. So it is leaders that can address the issues of the resource scarce, and it is leaders that create those issues of resource scarce.
That's Moses Adward.
And then, yes.
Yeah, you can continue, and then maybe in the next 10 minutes, you can wrap it up, with the what would be the way forward in this case, this scarce resources in South Sudan. And actually, you mentioned it from the beginning. It was a term that used, by those economists from UK. It's not just you making it that there is a curse because we have the resources. So I wanted to go ahead, but go to the next 10 minutes. You can go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I was just talking about what have been the experience. My here, تجربة أو تجارب بتاع دول أخرى في دول ما عندهم even موارد زي جنوب السودان زي Singapore. What have they done right that we can do right in South Sudan? With being blessed with the resources plus what they have done right, if we do it right plus our resources, South Sudan would be developed. We will not be underdeveloped, because the idea of curse is the idea that we are underdeveloped. So if you are underdeveloped, you are under resource curse, because it is a paradox to be wealthy in resources and you cannot develop your country. That's why it is called resource curse. We should be the fastest growing economy in East Africa, because we have resources that have not been even utilized, whether minerals or oils. Some of these resources we would have surplus that could be invested, because the countries that develop with those resources has a formula. That is, you save money If you save that money, you invest them in industries and different sectors, education, health, infrastructure, telecommunication, all other sectors, tourism, security, good governance. So that money, you invest them. If you invest them, then your economy will grow. If the economy grow, then you can talk about development. But if you take the oil and export it, and you distribute the money in Dubai and in Kenya and Uganda, South Sudan economy will not develop for the next 100 years. The economy will not develop because development is far away from our terminology. You must invest the money first, and then if you invest, the economy will grow. If the economy is growing by 5 to 10, whatever percentage, then you can talk about being developed. And if we start to develop, then we are getting out of the resource curse in South Sudan. But as long we are not investing the oil money to improve our livelihood, to improve our modern infrastructure, to improve education, to improve health system or healthcare system, then every day South Sudan is becoming poorer. We are becoming poorer every day because our resources are being taken out of the country and the money is not returned to be invested back in the land and in the people. So what is the way forward? The way forward is simple. We must have institutions and good leadership. And this is why we always campaign for political change in the country. Because with this leaders' mentality that are in Juba, their mentality is just to steal public money and waste them in Dubai, in Kenya, in Nairobi, in Morocco, in Ethiopia, in Khartoum, in India, in London, in Australia, without thinking of investment. And as long we are consuming the oil money, we will not develop. Our economy will not grow because we need to invest. It is investment that grow the economy, not consumption. So this leadership must change, and a new leadership with a new mindset, such as the those of Lee Kuan Yew. They are there in Nuer, they are there in Cholo, they are there in Dinka, they are there in Acholi, whatever tribe, 64 tribe.
and,
They,
and, and, and put forward a Martian plan for South Sudan after
yeah,
all the destruction that has taken place since 2006 all the way to 2023.
exactly. Everything in the world rise and fall based on leaders. The economy can develop, can grow and develop because of leaders. And things can go the inverse relation, like what we are talking about, the cash resource. It's the inverse relation between resources and the outcome of development. We are not developing. So what we have and the outcome of development every year and economic growth are not matching. So it is a case. So what we need, capacity building is not enough, but it is important. Following the best practices from other countries, تجارب بتاع الدول الآخرين النجوا في اقتصاد بتاعهم أو في we must follow the best practices of other countries that have used the right formulas to grow their economy, to have a democratic institution, to those that have fought corruption, those that have done elections so that people can appoint their leaders that could be accountable. We cannot afford to grow the economy with the presidential decrees by appointing people who are not accountable to the citizen. That will never grow the economy. And I got to go to اقتصاد ما بيدو تعليمات زي جيج صفا وانتباه doesn't work with economics. You must have policies, plans, saving money, invest the money, then the economy will grow and then the country will develop. Economic development will happen, human development will happen. But with the decrease and talimat, nothing is going to work. We will live under curse for next 50 to 100 years. So we must develop our capacity of our institutions so we can shift from individualized institution to inclusive and democratic institution in the country and follow the best practices of other countries, and having election is very important so we can appoint our leaders, that we can say that you have looted the public money, where is our money, you must be taken to court, and you must pay for your corruption. This high corruption must be clean so we can have a clean country with the less corruption that can benefit from the resources that God has given the Republic of South Sudan. We are not supposed to be poor. We are not supposed to be uneducated. We are not supposed to fight civil wars that are part of the resource case, because you can see in all these countries that have oil. Algeria was in war in 1991 to 2002. Angola was in war in 1975 to 2002. Congo has war in 1997 to 1999. Iraq has war, three wars, 1974, 1985, and 2003. The same thing with Nigeria, two wars. Sierra Leone, 1991 to 2002, there was a war. Sudan. So one of the resource cases is that there is always civil wars because everybody want to fight for regionalism, and this is part of resource case because we fought for secession because of oil so that we can utilize our money and our natural resources. Now, some people in South Sudan are fighting for regionalism or secession. So it is a never ending resource case. If you don't stop corruption, put the rule of law, a better constitution, better institutions, human development, and economic growth and economic development, and all freedoms, and shift from dictatorship to democracy, then we will still remain underdeveloped. And our resources will be taken outside, and these people who are looting our money will die and they will leave us in poverty and underdevelopment. So we better wake up and fight through non-violence, change this government so we can address the issues, the symptoms of natural resource cases. That is poor quality of life, civil wars, corruptions, mismanagement of state affairs, what we call four evils in UCC. So these issues are addressed, could be addressed and could be solved if we have good leadership and if our citizens can wake up and fight for their rights through peaceful means. Thank you, Ustad Jonkor. I know this is a big topic. It can take hours, but we have other commitment. I hope we know that with the natural resources, there is a cost if you mismanage them. There is always a cost, and that cost that bring under development is termed as the paradox of plenty, having more and still being poor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ustaz Moses Edward. It's so phenomenal with this, presentation. Our people are benefiting. Very important, very informative. Really, really, really appreciate you for coming and adding this. Though our people sometimes like a topic, economic or a topic that is not popular, they don't come in with a big number. But it will take time. It will take time to train our people to understand that economic actually is more than a politic, because you cannot run a country smoothly politically without having a strong economy. Because if somebody is hungry, if there is no source of income, if there is no job, then we will not be able to function. And you put it right. That's why we need change of leadership, to have someone who listen, someone who just don't decree, but in the state he look for the numbers and he knows, and he plan of 10 years, plan of 5 years, plan of 25, a plan of 50 years. That's how it is. We need a real good planning manager. That's what we need in our country. Someone who can plan, and apart from that, also we need people to be given an opportunity so they can speak up. Because without speaking and expressing yourself, we will not know what ideas does Moses have. But when you speak loud, like you're speaking, people will know. Oh, well, like this guy, he can offer a solution. He knows how to talk economy. He knows exactly what these numbers mean, which work for us in South Sudan, what doesn't work. We can analyze what resources we have. We have land, we have river, we have this, we have rain, we have all sorts of.
It's Concord that our people don't know how much exactly quantity of oil is being produced per day. And part of the case, our people don't know this. The oil companies should produce report, and the government should produce a report, and that should be given to people to see. There is too much secrecy in oil money and quantity, and that is a big problem.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that's why it requires, someone very charismatic to get us out. And there are South Sudanese among millions of people. There are more thousands who are really, really capable in doing such. We will keep fighting, and we will not be silent, because silence is a violence. Until here, we would like to conclude. I wish we would have continued, but we have other commitment that we are tied into. Thank you so much. Until we meet you again next week with another episode of Concerned Citizen of South Sudan. Don't forget to like our video and share it and prescribe it, so you can have more news when you can get some new, and then you go for it. Of course, we will bring in the issue of the health of the president and other, pressing issues for the next coming days, and talk about this this issue. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you for being part of Concerned Citizen of South Sudan. Remember, silence is a violence. See you again.
Assalamu alaikum, African one. If you wanna be free, the most simplest one in the world. Get yourself the better with reggae music coming straight to you from the one of the most peaceful man. So many lying down on the streets, whatever them with their dancing at the ends. Get yourself the most free time. I preach about freedom. Preach about freedom.
We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war. We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war. We're here to speak the word. We're here to stop the war.
Let us look on the street as a lesson, youth. Stop violence as a lesson. You have to listen and be a man. The music we are doing is not a music for fun. We are preaching, hear it loud and clear. Hey, night and day, no sleeping it out. Better preach, let the people hear. Better preach, let the blind feel. The song of freedom and love.